Welcome to the webinar. This is number 7 in the Financial Abuse Awareness series. My name is Bill Mitchell. This series is part of the Financial Protections Project co-designed by the Queensland Government, Caxton Legal Centre and the Townsville Community Law. The series is an online continuing professional development program that aims to raise financial industry awareness about the financial abuse of older persons. Before we begin, we acknowledge the traditional owners of the land and pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging. This presentation is about understanding financial abuse. The slides are not read verbatim but paraphrased for emphasis. They are designed to be standalone, readable modules and contain references for deeper learning. So let's begin. Before we begin the module, let's take a moment to think about this statement. Financial abuse is a complex subject, and the concepts that explain financial abuse include an interplay of many factors. Importantly, different people in the community have different understandings and different conceptual models of financial abuse. Let's also reflect on this statement from Jackson. She says the conceptualisation of elder abuse has shifted over time, with some suggestion that the criminalisation of elder abuse is responsible for the increased attention the social problem has received. Criminalisation may have helped the field gain some recognition in the 1990s, but by the 2000s it was unequivocally the emphasis on financial exploitation that elevated, in fact catapulted, elder abuse into the sphere of a social problem. Given that research is suggesting that financial abuse is the most prevalent and was responsible for catapulting elder abuse as a policy issue, how much have you already heard about financial abuse? Understanding financial abuse means understanding theories, concepts and definitions. Developing an understanding of this background to financial abuse is directly relevant to your ethical duties. Understanding the theories behind financial abuse helps advisors better appreciate the dynamics that cause or contribute to abuse. On the right-hand side, you can see the learning outcomes expected for the participants of this module. There are a range of theoretical frameworks explaining financial abuse. It is thought to be the most prevalent form of abuse, but it's also the most difficult and variable to measure. There are many theories explaining elder abuse, and they include those listed at the bottom. Take a moment to look through those listed. Approaches to elder abuse that were modelled on child abuse or intimate partner violence have not been able to explain financial abuse, so different analytical frameworks are required. Financial abuse is now studied in two ways. Firstly, as a part of elder abuse, but secondly, independently from the broader phenomenon. Jackson says in her article there's 30 ways in which a person might be financially abused. The dynamics of financial abuse are complicated. Unlike family violence, similar rates of financial abuse can be found across both genders, and in some studies men appear to be more at risk, while other studies indicate that women are at great risk, particularly where the abuse is of a hybrid nature. Financial abuse cannot be described easily. It's got to be explained by reference to a legion of other contexts, circumstances and impacts. Be aware that financial abuse is a type of ageism. It's the most prevalent form of elder abuse. It's defined variously and continues to be defined, can occur by itself or with other forms. It includes a very wide range of conduct and can be experienced by individuals from all walks of life. It can be perpetrated by a wide range of individuals and entities, and it can be experienced in a range of settings. It can overlap and align and interconnect with other forms of violence and abuse. It can be a gendered issue, and it has impacts that are felt widely. There are a number of early conceptual frameworks that suggest the components of abuse. They include the vulnerabilities of older persons, the characteristics of the relationship between the older person and the perpetrator, an assessment of who benefits from that relationship, and the sorts of tactics used, including undue influence, deceit, coercion and theft. Conrad in 2011 proposed 6 clusters of financial abuse based on descriptive statements. They were thefts and scams, abuse of trust, financial entitlement, coercion, signs of possible financial abuse, and difficulty managing money. This led to the Older Adult Financial Exploitation Measure, or the OAFEM, which is a specialised screening tool for detecting financial abuse. This is one of the tools used by the Financial Protection Service to detect financial abuse in a range of settings. Financial abuse covers a very wide spectrum of conduct. There are some domains that are categorised to use to describe major financial abuse. They include stealing or misappropriated property, coercion resulting in surrendering rights or property, impersonation, inadequate contributions to household expenses, and where the respondent older person is destitute and didn't receive the necessary assistance from family or friends. Although the work describing financial abuse is always evolving, there are various commonalities. Primary among them is that they recognise the importance of including the perpetrator and their characteristics as well as the social network or environment. The relationship between the perpetrator and the older person subject to the abuse can be assessed in terms of the position of trust, the status inequality between them, their patterns of interaction over time, and the extent to which there is reciprocity. This list provides a useful ready reckoner for advisors when you're considering a possible abusive situation. Just consider those 4 bullet points. Here's an industry example from the accountant's 110 APES on objectivity. Accountants are to observe objectivity as a fundamental principle. They're not allowed to allow bias, conflict of interest, or undue influence of others to override their own judgments. There's some useful thought that can be had based on what Conrad said around, is a potential perpetrator in a position of trust? Is there a status inequality between them? What are their patterns of interaction over time? And to what extent is there reciprocity? So the duty to act accordingly will be to make sure that a proper assessment is undertaken, to make sure there aren't circumstances or relationship biases that unduly influence your judgment. It's important to remember that financial abuse is a manifestation of ageism, and it's nuanced and contextual. The sorts of common manifestations of ageism include stereotyping, prejudice, discrimination, harassment, and vilification, and of course abuse, exploitation, neglect, and violence. There are a range of international definitions of financial abuse, but there is no universally accepted definition. It encompasses a very broad range of conduct. The United States Centers for Disease Control does have a definition of financial abuse, and I'll leave that on the screen for a moment for you to read. You can see that definition mirrors the World Health Organization's definition on elder abuse. The MetLife study of elder financial abuse in 2011 concluded three types of financial abuse: crimes of occasion or opportunity, crimes of desperation, and crimes of predation or occupation. There is no accepted Australian definition of elder abuse or financial abuse. The government is developing key definitions as part of the national plan. Financial abuse does occur within a relationship implying trust, is the primary focus of the Financial Protection Service. Most Australian definitions locate financial abuse within a relationship implying trust, such as within a family or caregiver setting. These definitions distinguish criminal activity like theft and fraud. Increasingly, Australian jurisdictions are developing policies that define financial abuse. The Victorian Government and the New South Wales Government have definitions of financial abuse. Until an Australian definition is settled, we adopt the approach taken by Houston in 2017. We describe elder abuse in line with the World Health Organization definition as a single or repeated act or lack of appropriate action occurring within any relationship where there is an expectation of trust which causes harm or distress to an older person. We describe financial abuse as a range of behaviours committed for the purpose of monetary gain from the older person and arising in a relationship of trust. Financially abusive behaviours can include, but aren't limited to, illegal, improper or exploitative use of finances, resources, assets or financial position. Before we leave, think about the definition that places elder abuse and financial abuse. What are the limitations of this definition? And what potential victims does a relationship implying trust leave out? What potential perpetrators does it leave out? How might it be reformulated to be more inclusive of all forms of interpersonal violence against older persons? And does the use of the term elder make definitions probably problematic for use in the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities? Thanks for listening to this webinar series. Feel free to download the PDF for future reference. The next module is the impacts of financial abuse. Thanks for listening.